When people start to use Power BI, the first thing that they usually do is try to connect to one huge data set, which, let's be honest, is very probably Excel, and import all of the data. As soon as you've done this, you'll suddenly have a Power BI book that allows you to cut and slice your data with ease and actually enables you to see your data in ways that you've not been able to do before. This approach is perfectly simple and correct. And indeed, for a lot of people, it might actually enable you to do everything that you actually need to be able to do. But in the long term, it's also going to limit you. To really get the most out of Power BI, you need to consider the data model behind what you're building. And by that, I'm talking about how you structure the data that you bring into your Power BI book. Data modeling is a very large subject. And indeed, if you're interested on that, I'd recommend that you read up on Ralph Kimball, who basically wrote the book on how to model data. But for the purposes of this short video tutorial, we're really not going to go into much detail about the subject. However, we're going to pick out one key element of data modeling that really should help improve your Power BI books. And that is the concept of creating a date dimension. Now, I really can't stress how important this is for you. And if you're going to do anything in Power BI, I would always recommend that you build one of these because it's going to open up the ability to create date-based measures such as year-on-year metrics. It's also super simple to do, as we're going to see. Now, in essence, a date dimension is a table of dates. Now, while that doesn't sound anything radical, if you consider that it's a very small set of data sitting in isolation from your main data that contains every single date in a year, that means there's only ever going to be 365 rows of data per year. That means that if you apply any filters to that data set, the filters are only going to be working on that very small set of dates, so the 365 rows, rather than having to iterate through everything in your main set of data. Now, if the data that you've imported into your book is 10,000 rows, it's really not very many rows and you're not going to notice any difference. But if you've got 10 million rows worth of data, then you're really going to see a difference in performance. Certainly once you start using it to build metrics. The other benefit to using a date dimension is that you can enrich the date with all sorts of different things. So for example, if you want to build a flag that says, is it a weekend? Is it a holiday? What day of the week? You don't have to write any DAX or any measures into your main set of data because you can drag it in from your date dimension. And it just makes the whole process of using dates within your book that much easier. So now we're going to look at how we build that date dimension and then how we can then use it going forwards. Okay, so once we've opened Power BI, first thing that we're going to do is we need to insert the table to actually produce our date dimension. So we go to the modeling tab at the top here. We see this option here, the new table option. If we click on that, it creates a new table over here, and the DAX expression bar is available to put in the code that we need to create the table. So if I just paste the code in here, this is the code that you will need in order to create the table that we're going to use. Now, we'll provide the code at the bottom of the video, but it really is as simple as just pasting this in this way, and Power BI itself will generate the table needed to give us the date that we're interested in. Now, I should say at this point, a bit of a disclaimer, this is not my code. The code here has been taken from Alberto Ferrari and Marco Russo. They're two, if you've not heard of them before, they are oracles on the DAX side of things and well worth looking up. This code has been lifted from them and I've made a couple of additions just to sort of make it work in the way that we want it to. Now, if you're not familiar with DAX, none of this really matters. You can literally just paste this into the formula bar at the top and it will work. But the things to be aware of are these four things at the top here, which are, we would term them as variables. Okay, so that means you can set something for them and it will have an impact on the code later. Now, the important points here are the start and end date, but I will come back to those later because we want that will determine when the calendar table starts and ends. But we want to do that based on the data that we're going to be using to build our reports for. And then these two are obviously quite important because these determine what the day of the week is the first day of the week. So as you can see, this is set that Monday is the first day of the week. If you wanted Sunday to be the first day of the week, you'd change this variable to 0. And this number here determines the start of your financial year. So this financial year starts in July, but some people's financial years will run January to January, or however it works for you, basically. So once we've put that in, once I've clicked out of it, you saw there was a little bit of working there. If we click on the data tab on the left hand side, you will now see that the date dimension has been created with all of the dates. It's as simple as that. This is a fully functioning date dimension at this point that you can kind of use. The only things that we kind of need to do at this point are mark the table as a date dimension. This is just an internal thing for Power BI so that it recognizes that this is a date dimension that it can use. And once I do that, I then just select that the date is the date column in my date dimension and OK that. And that really is all done at that point. The other thing you probably noticed if you look at this, that some of these look very strange. There's no sort of week, day, or month or anything like that. So next we kind of need to go and sort that out and format things correctly. So let's go back into this and go to the date dimension that we've created here. Now, firstly, if I click on the date, you'll see that the date has been set as a date time. I personally don't ever really use the time function when storing dates. So in this instance, I'm going to change it over just to be a date, and then I'll change my format of my date to be in a short date. That's entirely a personal preference. It depends on what you like in terms of your reporting, but a short date format works better for me personally. Next up, we're going to change up the year. Now, if you are familiar with Excel, this will probably be fairly familiar, but I can literally just click in the format box and I can change it to a year, so a 4-character year in that way, and should just work for us. Likewise, I can change the month. In this instance, I want it to be the full month. If I wanted it to be a short month, I could do 3 M's, but I'm going to do 4 M's so that I get the full month name. Again, likewise, I'm going to change the day of the week here, and I can change the day of the week to be a full day of the week, or a shortened version by using 3Ds. So I've changed those all over now. And if I go to my data tab, I can then start to see the impact of that. So if I look at my date, it's now in short date format. The year is now actually registering as a year. The month is registering as as the actual month, and you can see it's the full name. Likewise for the Saturday. Now you can go through and change these as you want. You'll also notice that we've sort of got fiscal period dates in there that you may or may not wish to use. Again, it will be based off the calendar that you've kind of got, and the quarters, etc., are related to that date parameter that we put in. I just open this up. You can see this fiscal month parameter. So depending on what you select, it will do a quarterly calendar on the start date of that fiscal period. Really and truly, that's kind of as simple as it is. The date calendar will all order itself because it's based off a series of dates. So by that, for example, you see that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they all are sorted correctly. because it's recognizing that of the date. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also then build in various different flags if you so wished, like for example a weekday flag that you could then just exclude the Saturday and Sunday and put in your holidays and all that sort of stuff. You can build this out as much as you want, or as little as you want, but in this format it's going to do everything that you kind of need. So if I now bring in some data, I've got a CSV file that I've prepared with a bit of test data in here. If I connect up to that, I can now go here and I can go into my modeling tab on the side, and I can join the order date to the date in my date dimension. You can see it establishes the link between the two sets of data, which means that I can now use the date dimension in conjunction with the sales data that I've just brought in. So if I then bring this data in, and it's not going to work, just to be clear on that, but if I bring in, for example, the month, you can see my months, and then I bring in the sales amount, nothing happens. Okay, so what's going on there? Reason this isn't working is because I said earlier that we were going to have a look at the parameters on the date, and if you look at it, it's using the current year to generate the date dimension. So you can see the current year is 2023, and it's populated a series of dates in 2023 because it's saying, give me the date of the where the year is today and the month is 1 and the day is 1, and the end date is the year. Get me the year of the current date, where the month is 12 and the date is 31. So that's the current full year. But in order for us to match this up to our sales data, we need to pass in the sales data years so that it will correctly create. So in order to do that, instead of using today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put min, so that's going to give me the minimum value, and I want the sales data, and I'm interested in the order date because that's what we've joined the date dimension to. If I put that in, and I then take the same thing and I remove this and change this to the max, like this, and OK that, you'll now see that the dates in my date dimension have changed. This means that the dates in the date dimension are dynamically working according to the sales data table. So if I then go back to my report that I created, you can now see that I now see data against January, February, March, April, etc. So in doing that, I now know that my date dimension is connecting up correctly with the sales data, and I can use everything from my my date dimension to then cut and slice my data. I don't have to do anything with the order date here. So you might have started playing around with trying to sort of create DAX to pull out the weekday or the month number or something along those lines. By creating the date dimension over here, I don't have to do any of that at all. In fact, I can even hide this value here because I don't want anybody to really use it. I want people to use the date dimension, drag the values in, and then connect it up with, and then drag in the sales data over here in the way that I want it to be used. Okay, I think that kind of concludes the tutorial at this point. Hopefully you can see creating a date dimension is extremely simple and you will reap the benefits of doing it. So I fully recommend that you create a date dimension and link it up to your sales data. It's very simple to do, and it's quick and easy to use once you've got it in there, but you will be able to write much more complex measures off the back of that because you can reference the date dimension and apply filters and all sorts of time intelligence measures. If that doesn't mean anything, have a little Google on it, because time intelligence is the way that DAX sort of creates calculations from dates. And yeah, hopefully that helps you to start building more intelligent functional Power BI books.